Hello, everybody. Wednesday, June 26, 2019, 9:38 p.m. And we're gonna continue to watch possible Hurricane Alvin. It is a tropical storm. It is named. We're gonna check that out and some of the severe weather continuing to just demolish parts of the United States. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. The temperatures alone would tell you it's a beautiful day everywhere. Some places a little hot, some places a little chilly, but you'd be surprised what's coming out of the west right now. We got some strong storms moving in from the upper west into what we call ground zero, as well as an upflow system coming through the Baja, as well as flow coming in from the Gulf. So we have a pretty significant situation going on, at least over the United States, and we're going to take a look at that quick and see how it formed. Actually, we've been going over the last couple days how some of these storms are bigger than states themselves, and we had another situation about 18 hours ago that covered many states like Oklahoma, Kansas. We're moving up towards Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota. There was even some possible tornado warnings overnight last night I didn't catch. And then Iowa caught its part of it, and then Missouri in turn. And as that time went on, you could see this moved heavily into Iowa. Kind of slowed down a little bit as we entered the Iowa and Missouri area. But then, just as we've been seeing week after week after week, another explosion of major storms. And then check this out. This is another thing that we haven't seen in quite a bit. These storms are starting to blow up a little sooner than we're used to. Sorry, that was my phone, guys. And as we're moving from west to east, these storms are going to aid in bringing stronger storms to the center of the country, depending on shear winds, depending on what's allowed to come up through the Gulf. We just have a lot of stuff going on, and hopefully some of these charts will show you that not even mainstream weather really understands what exactly or what areas to watch. They're basically saying the entire country, except for some areas, especially the areas that are just in dramatic heat waves right now with fire issues going on. But we're seeing possible rain, including significant weather as far northeast or northwest as Washington and Oregon. That's moving over places like Montana, the Dakotas. And then when we go to tornadoes, you're seeing a 2% tornado chance, which is fairly low, so we shouldn't expect anything crazy in those areas. But the fact that they have it there is certainly something to watch. But then moving between the wind and the hail, there really is no change whatsoever. As you see me moving back and forth, they're expecting some high winds in the upper west, and then basically from the center of the country moving north into the Dakotas, like we said, and many parts of Montana. That's going to stretch down through Nebraska, possibly the southeast end of Colorado, and as far down as Kansas. Maybe even farther when it sticks down into Texas, a little bit less of a percentage there. But again, the wind and the hail have pretty much the same chances. And then, like we said, that separate system that's just under the Great Lakes right now, causing issues in states like Western Kentucky, Western Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan. Get back to that hail thing. And basically anything under the Great Lakes. And now this may do a little swirl up into Michigan. We're not sure yet. We have some other charts to look at for that. But just to verify even more that these colors you're seeing are severe thunderstorm warnings. And when we get back to this chart, you can see why. There they are right there. All the way from Washington, curling down all the way into Nebraska and Kansas. So we're starting to see warmer weather up there. As we saw here, things are getting a little warmer. It is still 65 towards the coast, which is normal for this time of year. We're still breaking hundreds down in the southwest, but to see these storms starting to brew in this area is showing me that the stronger the storms are going to become in ground zero area. Based on the atmospheric conditions we're dealing with, it keeps coming to this point. And then once we get to this point, it's all about the different pressures that are going to determine whether or not it's going to go up to the northeast or stay straight. It's kind of like a mix of both at this point if we're watching a chart like this. So if I back up, this is going to take us into current time. So this is what we were looking at about 18 hours ago, more towards the middle of the country. And then we had that little explosion right here over southeastern Nebraska. That moved into Iowa and Missouri. And then this is interesting too. I just had to point this out. This line that shows up out of nowhere for 2 frames and then disappears. You know, I'm a meteor guy. That's possible. It could be a radar deflect, but soon. Still worth posting to you guys. Now, as we move forward into more current time, we see this explosion of storms and high altitude clouds begin to start over Missouri and Arkansas. We could bring that down even farther, and you could just see the momentum of this is being, it's like almost undercut by this situation, and at the same time this is blowing up, at the same time these are blowing up, we're getting another blow up down in the south in the Keys by southern Florida, more towards the eastern side in the Gulf area, where they're saying some of the highest temperature water they've felt in a long time, 98-degree readings in this part of the Gulf of Florida right now. Not to mention the Gulf is so hot as far as water that anything that finally does make it to the Gulf could potentially have something to bring with it as far as cyclones. Now, as we move into that topic, right now we do have Tropical Storm Alvin. It's a real thing. It's out there. Here it is. These are our most current looks at Alvin right now. We could see some development as they're expecting it to develop at least to the 65, 70 mile per hour range before it begins to apparently break down. That's what they're expecting. As it moves east to west, it's going to slow down. It's going to move a little north into cooler waters, possibly keeping Hawaii out of the picture, excuse me. And then if we go to tropical tidbits here and back up, sorry guys, oof, I should have gotten that out of me before we started the video here. But we can see that first invest right here. That is Alvin right there. So that was the 26. That's Alvin moving out there. But what I want to show you is how this high pressure bubble in the Atlantic is still keeping every bit of moisture coming off the west coast of Africa way down low. Nothing is being allowed up into the Gulf, which is a good thing for the United States, because if we had that cutoff line about right here, a lot of these storms would be brewing and then wanting to shoot north. Again, unless there's a pressure that is keeping these storms pushed south, they are naturally going to want to move north in the northern hemisphere. So we're lucking out right now because these storms are hitting the southern Caribbean, very warm waters, but what they seem to be doing is passing along this thin strip of Central America and then reforming on the other side as Pacific storms. And that is why I'm bringing up 2 other storms that are being shown on the chart. Here comes one of them around July 4th, 4th of July, which we have another topic to talk about as far as a planet alignment. And then shortly after that, we have another one that breaks off, and you can see that right there. So I brought up another chart so we can look at those in time. Again, there is time for this to change, but it looks like the Pacific, if the high pressure bubble in the Atlantic Ocean continues to stay the way it is, that is something we're going to have to watch out for without a doubt. Okay, so right now, check out the date. We're at the 23rd. It's the 26th. We are 3 days behind what you're seeing right now. As we get into the 23rd, you're going to see where they predicted Alvin, which is right there. So Alvin is going to be one of those storms that depends on the high pressure in the Pacific. It works the same way as the Atlantic. If this thing was allowed to come up here, it would probably die off a little quicker. The lower that these storms stay, the more potential they have of making their way towards Hawaii or even farther. We actually watched one of these storms bypass Hawaii and move into the western Atlantic where it's typhoon territory, which was something you don't see every day. But to stay on track here, there is Alvin moving up. It should come and go fairly quickly. But as we move into July 4th, we're starting to see a little bit stronger and more formed cyclones closer to land, which means they have more time to develop depending on the pressures going on in this area. So here would be letter B if it does take place at this time. And we're talking, we get registered numbers pretty low with this one, and I think I got a 50, yeah, there we go, 58. 958 is pretty low, guys. That could be a Category 2 storm. It could be a strong Category 1. And if it stays this way and there's nothing blocking it, it looks like nothing's blocking it, this thing might want to shoot north, In fact, if we move forward a little more, you might want to see, you might see it going north. There we go. Perfect example. There's no high pressure keeping it pinned down. It's going to want to go north. And then as it goes north, you see those numbers rise. Now we're at 991. So you could tell it's much cooler water up here. They want warm water to survive, but if the high pressure allows them to move north, they're going to move north. But the second you see a high pressure line pop up again, there it goes. It levels out and starts moving more in a western direction. You could see how these pressures play a very significant role in where these storms go. So we almost got hugged by a low pressure, keeping it east to west, and then at the last moment, right there, you could see a line pop up here, and that kind of pulls it up northward, and it allows all this open space for the storm to move in this direction, which would in turn weaken it if we continue on this path. But again, you see it start to move a little bit more west there. And then just at the end of the frame, right before our data ends, we see a third possible cyclone popping out right at the same spot, Central America, caused by the warm water and the storms that are being brought from the west coast of Africa all the way to the South Caribbean, but having nowhere to go but either following this high pressure line up through Texas. That's why Texas has been reporting over 110-mile-an-hour straight line winds. It's like taking an entire storm and shoving it through a valley like as quick as possible. That's what's happening here. A lot of these storms are staying half on water, half off water, but they're being forced through Texas and then up into the U.S. rather than being let loose north here or anything else because of the high pressure bubble that's reaching all the way into the Gulf right now. So that is why a lot of these storms are crossing over small patches of land rather than getting caught up in this roundabout here, you can kind of call it, that's bringing everything up to Texas. So these are becoming Pacific hurricanes rather than Atlantic hurricanes coming from the South Caribbean. But with that said, I have a few pictures to show you. We're going to have to zoom in on these to take a closer look. But this is the month of June. This is what we expect as far as hurricanes in the month of June. They tend to come from the South Caribbean, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing the South Caribbean very warm, but what's happening is the Bermuda Atlantic pressure is not allowing these storms to come in this direction. You can see the green means more than likely, and in this exact area is the hottest of the water. We just went over the fact that we're seeing 90-degree weather in the Gulf of Florida here on the west coast of Florida Gulf. But the pressure alone is not allowing these storms to come north. They're being pressed along this strip of Central America and then pushed out into the Pacific Ocean. So this is typically what we see for June. When it comes to July, you start seeing that a lot of our storms come from out in this area. That's because after they come from the West African area and down towards the Cape Verde Islands, they travel this way and they tend to want to move up in this direction or into the Gulf. That's because the high pressure in the Bermuda Atlantic tends to pull back this time of year and allows these storms to go north a lot sooner than we're used to. So usually early in the season, we see our hurricanes down here. We see a lot of Pacific hurricanes because that season starts in May as opposed to June 1st, like the Atlantic season. And then once we get to August, basically you just see everything coming off the West Coast. And then when we get to September, that's when things come back towards the Caribbean because that's the warmest of the water. So we kind of do a seesaw thing. But just to give you a little bit of an update of where these hurricanes come from, where they go, and what time of the season they do so. So we have a lot to look out for. Now, let me backtrack out of here. This gives us a little bit of an idea, pretty interesting chart, of where hurricanes tend to hit when it comes to the U.S. coast. Now, check this out. You can see right here, total strikes from 1900 to 2010. So we're missing 18 years of data here. So we could have, a little bit of these colors were changing, but for the most part, this is a pretty good chart to use to see what parts usually get hit. And you could tell these light blue colors are less hit, But then you get into these lighter teals and the yellows and the greens and light blues and yellows and then reds. You go down here, these are higher hit areas. So the Carolinas are more prone than that little like turn we have in the upper east parts of Florida and Georgia. And then obviously, as we move up to the northeast, besides those parts that stick out into the ocean where, past hurricanes like Jose could have affected. Obviously, this was adjusted via maybe not Sandy because this was 2010. I believe Sandy was 2012. So they didn't even take into account Hurricane Sandy with this. But you can kind of get an idea of where these storms are tracked to once they do start forming. And then the Gulf is just loaded with these lower colors here. The numbers are much higher. The southeast end of Florida is obviously a target zone with the Bahamas always having warm water. The Keys in this little red zone here in South Florida, very prone to hurricanes. And then we saw Hurricane Irma come up in an area that's not so prone to hurricanes. So these don't always follow the rules, guys, but it's just these are simple charts that we can look at and get a basic idea of what to expect. All right, last but not least, we're going to look at Ventus Sky. As you can see here, we have O1E, which is now Alvin. But what I want to do is move forward in time and see what Ventus Sky actually picks up as far as these next two possible invests that we're going to see starting around the 4th of July. Now, I believe we'll be able to see at least the 4th of July one, if I'm not mistaken. It should pop up any sec. Here we go. This is where the rotation is going to begin around the 4th of July if we make it there with these systems. And here is the 5th. And then by the 6th, we could potentially have a pretty significant storm on our hands here, guys. If we can get this to load, we can get maybe some wind speeds. Again, we're 10 meters off the ground where most people live. And we're pushing 80 miles an hour. So that's easily Category 1 storm. Potentially higher. Now, again, just look at the difference if someone were to change this to 100 meters up. Now we're talking close to 100 miles an hour. So just that little change there can really throw people off. But when you back out and you look at this from above and you check out the strength of it, remember these sites, guys, back in 2017 and some of the things we saw in 2018? That's just the way it works out. So, all right, guys, I hope I left you with enough info today. Had some pretty significant earthquakes today to talk about. 6.4 considered in Russia. That's a pretty big deal. We had a 6.2 near Panama today, Central America. And then a couple other pretty decent size, 5.7 near the Gizo Solomon Islands. This area has been getting lit up hard. And then a 5.3 near New Zealand, just north of New Zealand, east-northeast of La Esperance Rock, which is an island right around this area. Same fault line, so same area to watch, guys. So I hope I got enough info out for you for right now. A nice swarm up here by that 6.4 Russia quake. We could see all these aftershocks. So we've been getting a lot of swarms lately, and one of those swarms took place in Oklahoma. We had one in California. We had a small one over by the New Madrid fault line. A little bit of a grouping here by Puerto Rico. So a lot going on, a lot to talk about. But right now we got Alvin churning and churning, seeing how strong it's going to get. I believe it will reach around that 65 to 75 mile per hour wind rate and then kind of die down as it hooks to the north as that high pressure releases. So, all right, guys, that's what I got for you for now. We'll be back later. Anything breaking, I will bring to you ASAP. If not, then tomorrow is the beginning of the official work week, and I will be on here on a daily basis, back to the live streams. So get ready for those, and I'll at least give you an hour notice beforehand. All right, guys, have a great night. Caroline says hi to everybody, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.